welcome back to Krista Living Sober. This would be episode 9. Depression is very common among people who are battling addictions, whether it's to drugs, to alcohol, to anything. Anything that we use as a substance can trigger and intensify feelings of loneliness, sadness, hopelessness, and so all of that goes hand in hand with depression. For me, I feel like my depression definitely stemmed from a feeling of loneliness, just because when I was younger, I think ever since I can remember having memories, I remember feeling alone and abandoned. And I'm not here to put blame on anybody about any of that, but I think my depression stemmed from feeling of abandonment, from being adopted, from not really having the normal, birthing from birth to adulthood life. Mine kind of was disrupted, right? From being adopted to being in foster care to having older parents to not kind of fitting in to not knowing much about my birth family to never knowing my birth father. So many things played a factor, right? And then you try to fit in, and then you become a teenager, and then you have feelings, and then you try drugs and you drink, and then you experience different feelings, These are different highs and lows that we are going to deal with throughout our lives. And honestly, I dealt with that until I was 30 years old. So whatever, I finally battled it. I faced my demon head on and I said, hey, enough's enough. And it took me that long, but I did it. Clinical depression could last for weeks, sometimes months, and even years. So it just depends on what kind of depression. But I feel like for me, mine's clinical. I mean, I've been diagnosed with many different things, but for me, clinical, expanding throughout my entire life, eventually, affecting my ability to work, my ability to maintain a healthy lifestyle, right? And that's what happened. But it happened because I mixed my depression, my mental health with drinking. And when you feel like there's no end in sight, the drugs and the alcohol may appear to be an easier solution to those problems. And for me, the substances, the alcohol, any of that subsided any emotional pain. And for a temporary moment, brought bigger sense of happiness, and I could live with that, right? I replaced what I was feeling before with happiness, even though the happiness was in substances, was in drinking, was in all these negative things, right? And that's where I think my addictive pattern kind of took flight. And the more and more I consumed, the more I became dependent, and the more the effects had taken a hold of me. So I think luckily I didn't get any brain damage, but I don't know. No, I think I'm okay. But when people face depression, it can be an uphill battle every day. And since we're all different, what one person is battling isn't going to be the same as what the other person is battling. So different depressions may overlap with different things. Different mental health issues may overlap with different things, different substances, different blah, 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 it's just a big crazy puzzle, I guess. Or maybe not puzzle, it's a big graph, right? And it just stems off in different directions depending who you are, depending what you do. But so normally both depression and addiction can cause somebody to give up your activities, your hobbies, anything you do day to day that you once liked to do. You don't feel like doing it anymore, right? Depression and addiction, you would become prone to refuse or acknowledge that you have a problem. So for me, I was always in denial. I never thought I had a problem, even when I got arrested in the past, or when I had to go to court, or even getting my second OUI, you guys. Yes, I have two. We can talk about that another time as well, but I guess I refused to think that I had a problem even after I got my second OUI, even after they sent me to the Framingham Women's Prison because of that for a month, and I think your brain is really messed up when you feel like you don't have a problem because you're such in denial. And I don't know. So then you experience issues with personal relationships. And that was me big time too, because I just didn't care about my family life. Drinking and going out and getting annihilated and not caring was better than being at home miserable, sad, angry, depressed, And so I avoided a lot. And these personal relationships I avoided. And I wanted nothing to do with anything that personal, So I don't think I ever had a really long-term love relationship either. It was always just like, I'm afraid of that. So I'm going to never get into a relationship, or I'm never going to let myself do that, so I never became so close to anybody, and I never let myself until now, but, that was who I was before, and I used to isolate myself from people, and I learned how to be alone, which I'm okay with now, whatever, but, it's kind of crazy when your fear was being alone and you did everything because you felt abandoned and alone, but now you're just alone. So it was just like a full circle thing. And you know what? Being alone is not a bad thing. Being alone isn't necessarily a bad thing. I learned in the Buddhist traditions and my yoga teacher trainings and just spiritually, that being alone can help you grow, can help you become enlightened, especially when you're sitting for meditation, or, learning how to just be in the moment alone and sitting with yourself. So that's different. But I think when people think being alone being bad, it's when you isolate. So when people isolate, when they're depressed, they go off alone, right? They don't want anything to do with anybody else, and they kind of like shut the world out and keep themselves isolated, and they don't want help, and no one's getting in. And that can become so dangerous because that's what can lead to suicidal tendencies. And suicide is no joke. And when you place depression and isolation together in the mix with substance abuse and drinking, then it rises, I think, from 10% to 25%. And that's like a huge rise, right? And that's where it gets tricky. That's where, when someone isolates, you know it's severe and you know it's major and that person needs help. And there's so many things that you can do to help, but sometimes we're not aware in time, and that's when it's sad. That's when you hear about people committing suicide and you were too late. But one thing is, because I've had a couple of friends in my life who have committed suicide, you never want to blame yourself, but with anything else, like with dealing with addiction, dealing with mental health issues, dealing with anything, we have to help ourselves. Nobody else can do it for us. And as sad as that may be, it's the truth. So there's many different things you can do when you diagnose depression. You can get a physical exam. You can get lab tests, blood work done. You can get a thyroid test, because there's certain things that could be triggering the depression that you're dealing with, and you may not even know. Like, your thyroid could be low, or your blood count could be low, and certain body parts aren't functioning properly, and then therefore you get depression, and that's crazy. Your iron could be low and you could have depression. So it's really good to get a physical, go to your doctor, talk to them about what you're experiencing. And nutrition, what you eat, what you become, they say. You can get a psychological evaluation at your doctor's office. And then there's always the DSM-5, which is a manual for mental health professionals, and they use this book. It has all the mental health conditions in it, and it's not really accurate in my opinion, because anybody could sit down with you with that book and pick out the symptoms you have and misdiagnose you. Okay, misdiagnosing somebody is serious, and this is where I don't agree with the medical world and how they treat mental health and depression and certain issues, because it's so easy to put a label on something and then prescribe a medication, right? And in my mind, I feel like that is just covering something up and not necessarily working to fix that problem. It's like putting a Band-Aid on a flesh wound, right? It's not going to heal it. It might stop the bleeding for the smallest amount of time, but you're not fixing the problem. So I think for me, what helped is definitely reconnecting with my faith at the Salvation Army. I learned how to kind of, strip everything down and not rely on medication until I needed it, because there was a time after I did the program where I noticed I really needed something extra to help. So I did go to a therapist, and I did get back on medication for like a year just to help me. And then there was a time where I realized, hey, I'm better. My mind's working different. I don't think I need these medications anymore. So I stopped, right? And we are in control of our own bodies, and we know ourselves better than anyone else. So we have the control to control that. So yeah, guys, depression is something I feel like that always is going to live with me. And I know that at times in the past, dealing with depression was very hard. And there were moments where I couldn't see the light and didn't think that I would come out okay. And there's moments, like I had a couple weeks ago where I still break down and, have trouble seeing the light. But I know that if I keep my faith in my God and my higher powers, and if I just take the time that I need to focus my energy on my life and myself, and take a step back and look at everything that's going on and kind of recenter myself in my life, that's what helps me able to move on and see clearly, and instead of just staying in that cloudy, dark place that kind of overtakes me sometimes. And what helped was learning about faith in God and how my life changed for the better when I, didn't drink anymore, when I put down the drugs, when I started to love myself again, because you need to love yourself first. You need to love yourself first more than anything, You need to give yourself more credit than you do every single day, because when you are mean to yourself, when you let your thoughts get a hold of you, then that leaves the door open for the enemy, for that darkness to come right back in, and it's sad, and you get stuck in that cycle. I feel like I'm just going in circles repeating myself, but I'm going to do a depression part 2 tomorrow, so stay tuned. But I just wanted to come back and chat and let you guys know that I am still here. I am still going to do the podcast, whether it's talking to myself, but I hope that I can kind of reach people who are dealing with addiction, recovery, mental health issues, health issues, and I hope that I can be kind of like a guided light, or a place you can come and listen and kind of just know that you're not alone in what you feel and what you think, and just know that other people think like you. I know that it helps when I go to AA meetings and when I sit in group therapies and talk about things and know that I'm not alone. So I just want everyone else to know that I am here, I hear you, I see you, and you are not alone. So if you ever need to reach out, you have my social media tags, message me, and I will respond to you. I am here, and just have a blessed Saturday. Stay tuned for part 2 on my depression and mental health talk, and I'll have some more facts for you, maybe some more personal stories, and then some things that we can do to overcome, this battle that we have to face every day. And just remember to suit up and put the armor of God on. You all are worth it, and you all are strong and fierce, and you can stand up in the face of any darkness that is put in your way, because I have faith in you. All right. Bye.